So I'm walking down the street one day and I bump into someone that I hadn't seen for ages. And she looked pretty bloody fantastic. And I said to her, Sonia, what have you been doing? You look wonderful. I want those drugs. Whatever you're on, I want them. And she told me about a naturopath that she'd been seeing. She said, Jane, you know, I'm seeing Sheena. It's working wonders. It's a bit hardcore. I've got to see her every fortnight, you know, regular visits over a period of time, and here's what I've achieved. And I said, great, give me that business card. I'm going to book myself in. So I grabbed the business card, I go online, I check this woman out, and then I noticed that she operates from Mona Vale. Now, Mona Vale, from where I lived and where I worked, was a good hour-and-a-half drive in good traffic. So I factored that in, and the time for a consult, and the time to get back to work. I was looking at having to take half a day off, essentially. So half a day off, let's say on a fortnightly basis, let's say over a 6-month period, I'm looking at a solid 36 hours on the road and a lot of time off work. So all of a sudden it wasn't so much of a good idea. It wasn't actually even doable, or it didn't feel like it at the time. But then I noticed on her website that she'd written a book. And it was a book about getting well, being well, using diet as, you know, as therapy. All of a sudden, my mind did this complete flip. You know, mental gymnastics of the highest order made it seem like that, of course I could do that. That's not such a big deal. You know, I have a car. I have flexi time arrangements because, of course, I'm still working for the government at that time. I got this. I can do this. I can do this. I'll make this work. And before I know it, yep, I'm up there. I'm learning everything I'm learning. I'm starting to feel better and better and better. And what that did, it did two important things that really shaped my future. It gave me an experience of the halo effect. And the halo effect is, again, it's about what goes on in the unconscious part of our mind when we see that someone is an author. Unconsciously, we assume then that there's a degree of credibility about them. There's a degree of authority that they have. They are an expert in what they do, and we are drawn to them. They become our go-to person because we think, well, this naturopath can do something that the naturopath, who probably works at most 20 minutes away from where I live and work, as opposed to an hour and a half's worth of a drive, you know, that naturopath won't be as good as this one because this one is an author as well. Now, we don't consciously do this, but we unconsciously do it, and that's what got me on the Warringah Freeway on a regular basis, up and back, up and back, up and back, to see the naturopath. So the power of the halo effect, and the halo effect as it works for authors, just planted the seed in my mind that when it was going to be the time to launch my coaching business, to get out of being an employee and to get into being a business person and or an entrepreneur, a book would be the way to do it. So I started pretty soon after that writing my first book. Now, this turned out to be a circuitous 5-year journey that really didn't need to take 5 years in terms of how long it would take to write a book like I wrote. But it needed to be 5 years because I needed to go through the hero's journey that writing a book actually is. But I didn't know about the hero's journey at that stage. So all of these things I learnt along the way, wow, it's really been pretty full on, to be perfectly honest. But here's how I got to find out about the hero's journey. So I've been seeing my naturopath. I got the idea to write the book. I thought to myself, you know, there is a naturally lazy, and I'll own that word, but it's a kind of an an efficiency drive that I've got in myself. And I thought, okay, well look, you know, I'm not going to start from scratch. I don't need to start, you know, don't reinvent the wheel. I saw an online program that looked like it was pretty good. So I got this online program that had a whole lot of templates and tutorials on how to write a book. And I got started. But before too long, it got me started. I was off the starting block, so that was a good thing. But before too long, all this mindset related stuff started going on, all the negative self-talk. It's a biggie. If there's one reason the coaching industry exists, it has to do with helping people to get out of their own bloody way and to stop running interference against themselves. But anyway, there was I'd done the first chunk of work. I put pen to paper, put it that way. But what started going on in my mind was, well, you're not a good writer anyway. Sure, you can write a reasonable looking memo, but writing a book's a whole other thing. What makes you think you can do this anyway? And what's more, who's going to want to read your book? What's so interesting about you? What gives you the right? What if nobody buys it? What if it's really embarrassing and people realise that you're not nearly as smart as they used to think you were? So all this stuff, it was da-da-da, blah, 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 blah. I was beating myself up with this barrage of negativity, you know, self-targeted negativity that, not surprisingly, I put the book down. But the one piece of feedback I was giving myself that I could have called negative, that on one side wasn't too negative, there's two sides to the coin, but the piece that really did pay off and that I really took account of was that you're not qualified enough. And by qualified, in the end, it doesn't mean the pieces of paper. It doesn't mean how many degrees or fancy pieces of paper you've got. It means how ready you are, how much you are allowing your natural gifts to come to the surface. So the story I was telling myself that I bought at the time was that I wasn't qualified enough to write a book like the kind of book I was writing, which was all in the service of being able to launch myself as a coach. So the not qualified enough story took me into getting some more coach training. And my husband explains it, or describes it, I should say, like this. He says to people, well, then Jane really went down the woo-woo path. And I guess I started going down the woo-woo path a little bit with the NLP, but where I went to was into transpersonal coaching. And one of the very first things that we learnt was about the hero's journey. Now, the hero's journey comes out of Joseph Campbell. Gosh, could I forget that? That's not a name for me to be forgetting. He is one of the seminal influences in my life. Joseph Campbell wrote a book called The Hero of 1,000 Faces. And what I want you to know, or what I want you to do actually, after you've finished watching and listening to this episode, I want you to go to YouTube and put in the words Hero's Journey. And the first video that will come up is a TED-Ed video. And it will explain to you what the hero's journey is all about. It'll simplify it by mapping it out on a clock face, and it will simplify it further by taking you through the Hunger Games. There's also another great video, again, through YouTube. Put the words Hero's Journey in, and I think it may be the second or the third one that comes up. And that one will take you through the hero's journey as it's played out in The Wizard of Oz, Star Wars and Harry Potter. So anyway, learning about the hero's journey within the context of transpersonal coaching got me back on track. in terms of writing my book. So I dusted off what I'd done already. I put all of the mindset stuff into the perspective that I learnt when I learnt about the hero's journey. And in fact, I'm really going to shortcut myself here and tell you, just watch those videos and you'll know that for me, when I got to the 6 o'clock point in the hero's journey, and that's the dark place. That's the dark place, and for me, the image that's most potent is from Star Wars, when Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker are facing off. And of course, what's really going on there is that Luke is coming to terms with his own dark side, with his own shadow, with all of the stuff that he doesn't want to doesn't want to own, is what was going on for me at 6 o'clock. And specifically on the surface, what was going on for me was that I was a 52-year-old woman at that stage who'd just been made redundant from their well-paying and comfortable job, who was out in the wild world of business, and man, is that a wild world. You've got your sharks, you've got your dolphins, and you have to work out pretty darn quick who you're going to be interacting with in a business context. I can tell you that. But here I am, so 52-year-old woman, unemployed for the first time in my life, learning about sharks and dolphins, going into bloody menopause as well. So you might call it a perfect storm, and I tell you what, I know you can't see what I'm looking at, but I'm looking at some pretty bloody dangerous looking waves out there on Bondi Beach, and it's grey. It's as grey can be. So I think the weather, I think I'm mirroring the weather, or the weather's mirroring me. Anyway, so here I am at 6 o'clock. I'm up shit creek, and it hurts like hell. And what I used to do when something hurt like hell, so when I first knew I wanted to write a book, and I was uncomfortable because I didn't know where to start and what to do next, and so I bought an online program. And then the next time it hurt like hell, when I felt like I wasn't qualified enough to use a book to grow a coaching business, then I went and did more coaching training. So all of these things, I'm spending more money, I'm moving along through the journey, and I'm having to come to terms with all of the stuff I don't want to own. And here's a really big piece of what I didn't want to own. And here's a really big piece that, as I was writing my book, that ultimately did come to life. Let me assure you of that. It ultimately did come to life, but it took me the 5 years. And in terms of this habit, or pattern I should say, that I'd recognised when I was at 6 o'clock, was that I had a habit of buying my way out of discomfort. So I bought my way out of the initial discomfort with the online program. I bought my way out of the next piece of discomfort by doing the transpersonal coaching course. I then continued to buy my way out of feeling like I don't have what I need, I still need more help with writing the book. I kept buying, and at the end of the day, when I'm at 6 o'clock and I'm out of money, I'm out of work, my hormones are all over the place, I could not buy my way out. I could not buy my way out. And what's worse, what was playing out for me under the surface was a whole lot of guilt and regret and, you know, other things, self-doubt. Let's just put it in a big bucket there and say, you know, all the yucky, murky stuff that was playing out that I needed to process before I could move forward. And what I had to do was say to myself something that I had said to many people after my coach training, which was, look, I reckon if you sit in this discomfort, I think if you go into the heart of the vulnerability that this discomfort is all about, something really important might emerge. And what emerged for me was this, blinding moment of clarity about what I needed to get my book written. And as I started to come out of the darkness and talk to other people who had started to write books or hadn't started yet but knew that they wanted to write a book, as I started talking to people, I realised that I came up with the 5 main barriers that I won't say all, but that I'll say many first-time authors encounter. And what are they, you might think? Well, the first one is commonsensical enough, I think. The first one is what I call process. We need some sort of a process, and it's not a one-size-fits-all, but pretty much you want to know where to start, where and how to start, what to do next, what to do when this, that and the other happens, how to finish your book, how to get it published. And in the case of people like myself, so my book was all about being able to build my profile so that I could attract people into what ultimately became the coaching practice that I had to set up to replace the 6-figure income that I'd lost when I was made redundant. So the last piece of that is then how to build your profile, how to get publicity and other things through being a published author. So that's barrier number 1, process. The next one was all about, how do I get the information out of my head and onto the page in a way that's going to make sense, both to myself and to the people that I'm hoping are going to read my book. So that's the second barrier, and I call that structure. The third barrier, and these are in no particular order of importance. There may be strategically, but again, different things for different people. There may be strategically a logical order that I put these in for people, but let me just say, the third barrier that I identified, and this came as no surprise to me, that's for sure, and that's about mindset. How do you set yourself up with a supportive mindset that's not going to be running interference on you all the time, that's not going to be telling you you're not good enough, no one's going to be interested in your book, there's nothing interesting about you? And in fact, what came up for me in this context is some programming that I got really early on in the piece. And the programming was all about what my parents, teachers, others used to think we needed to be safe. And it was things about not being a show pony. Don't be a show pony. Don't have tickets on yourself. Don't big note yourself. And whatever you do, don't love yourself. One of the most derogatory things we used to say about someone when they were, when we were in school was, oh yeah, she loves herself. Well, my God, I don't want to add up how many tens of thousands of dollars I've paid on therapy and wellness retreats and the like to be able to say, I love you, Jane Turner. I love myself. I do. Sometimes I got to work at it, that's for sure, but my God, oh my God, all the work around this particular aspect of allowing ourselves to be okay is just well worth doing. That's what I want to let you know. But here I am, I'm still at the third barrier. Now the fourth barrier is all about energy. It's about both creative and productive energy. And what I mean by that is, how do you keep yourself fresh, I suppose? Fresh, energised, focused, and on task. How do you manage to do that? How could I manage to do that when I saw so many other people who'd burnt out before they got to the finishing line? And partly why we burn out is because of all that mindset stuff. But the other thing is, there are particular ways to regenerate creative energy. And in fact, I came across a wonderful, wonderful person, Anna Kiko, again, somebody I have to name here, because she worked with me. She said, you know what, you've got a very, very good voice. You have an almost hypnotic voice. She said, I have tools, my whole life, my whole business is built around my understanding of the power of harmonics and binaural beats and the human voice. And what happened is that Anna Kiko and I worked together, and I've pulled together a tool that I give to authors, and well, I should say would-be authors, because people come to me when they just want to know how can I do this? And one of the tools I can give them is a creativity priming meditation that I put a track down with Anna Kiko. And between us, man, I reckon we nailed it. We nailed it. So here I am. I'm talking about energy, the importance of energy. So that is the fourth barrier. And then the fifth barrier is about feedback. And the flip side of feedback is accountability. But it's a word that I find resonates with people in a particular way, and it can mean that they actually switch off straight away. So I don't just use the word accountability. I use it when I need to, but really the word is feedback. It's about actually setting up some milestones along the journey and remembering to celebrate. And that's got a lot to do with energy as well. That's a celebration, a lifting off of the idea of this all being work and of it being hard. You celebrate when you hit those goals that you've set for yourself. And you remember to kick your own butt. If you're not able to kick your own butt, then I'm a butt kicker for hire, because you do have to kick your butt and you do have to keep yourself accountable. Or like me, a book that really could have taken me 6 months, it could have really taken me 3 months, wound up taking me 5 years. 5 years, and I'll say $30,000 worth of investment in various writing courses and mentoring and writing retreats and what have you. And I could begrudge that. I could begrudge those 5 years and $30,000. But I don't, because what that enabled me to do was go to the dark place, go to 6 o'clock and work my shit out, be given the gift of the 5 barriers, and here they are again. Well, let me say that what I did was then I built a program. It's called the Power Writing Program. I built that program around the tools to overcome the 5 barriers. And those tools are, I've called them pillars, but I think I'm rebranding them as steps. The 5 steps to becoming a published author are called process, structure, mindset, energy, and feedback. That's what enabled me to get myself up to book 4. And book 4 has happened. All the ideas for book 4 have come out of this room. Book 1 was the one that got me clear, that got me healed, and that got me empowered.